Yeah, and I echo the comments about how good it is to turn up at this time on the morning after the night before. Okay, first of all, I'd like to give my thanks to Winton Capital Management. I'm the Winton professor. So that's David Harding, as part of the philanthropic arm of Winton, support my work, which is very nice of them. I don't do anything about finance at all. I deliberately keep out of that area. So I work, as you'll see, in all sorts of other areas where risk is discussed in society, and what I look for are ways of telling the stories, and I hope that some of them might be relevant to your work. We've got a website, Understanding Uncertainty, I blog, do media stuff, and so on, and it's a great privilege to be able to do this kind of work. I really like it. As Joanne mentioned, I got this book, Sex by Numbers, which I won't be talking about, which some of you may be sorry about, but it's a great book, great book. It took quite a long time to write, took even longer to choose the cover. That was going to be the cover. Quite good. I check how long it takes to get the laugh. Not bad for a Friday morning after the conference dinner. So yeah, that's as far as I know is the first, statistical, graphical, dirty joke. And they said, no, can't have that as the cover. No, that's the cover they dared not show. So I'm afraid that's not the cover. Okay. People have trouble with numbers. I deal with numeracy all the time. That's what I'm concerned with. So that's one of my favorite examples of not a great pie chart from Fox News there. Bit slow, come on. You got the sex one quickly, I noticed. Bit slow on the pie chart. 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds get it quicker than that. Come on, get a grip. But in fact, what I'm going to be talking about, quite a lot of the work, as Joanne mentioned, goes into the behavioral economics. The sort of Daniel Kahneman stuff, the idea of the fact that numbers do not speak for themselves. They're a part of a story, and we have to know about that and understand how our numbers are received by the audience. We have to understand that. Okay, so for example, framing. Here's a nice example of framing. This is an advertisement on the London Underground. It was part of the 99% campaign. It said 99% of young Londoners do not commit serious youth violence. So that's what Daniel Kahneman would call a positively framed message. Now, and he'd say, thinking fast, engaging our emotions, we think, oh yeah, I was wrong, lovely, hug a hoodie, aren't they lovely, these young people? Thinking slowly, like I did, you stand there and think, hang on, that means 1% of young Londoners do commit serious youth violence. Population of London at the moment is about 9 million. That's about 1 million I'd consider as young, between 15 and 24. 1% of 1 million is 10,000. Oh my God. There's 10,000 violent young maniacs in this city. This is a really dangerous place. Okay, you're not supposed to think that. Don't think slowly. And I suppose what I'm going to be talking about today is trying to engage this thinking slowly brain a bit, this analytic brain, and dealing with numbers in a way that's not misleading. So, framing, we're always being framed. You're always being, a nice example that in Britain, the cardiac surgeons have a 98% survival rate, which is, of course, much better than the US, where they have a 2% mortality rate, really. Yeah, exactly. So, so that's how many do 10,000? So one of the principles that I work on, and we've just heard we're going to get additional funding from Winton to form an actual centre for risk and evidence communication. And the basic principle is, and I think an ethical principle, that the framing should get equal weight to the upside and the downside. It's called a uniform reporting of harms and benefits. And this idea is coming into health communication, that actually we should not be, if we want people to be autonomous adult human beings and exercise their choice, then we should not be trying to manipulate them according to the upsides and the downsides. So one of the principles that I regard as an ethical principle is that we're going to be trying to do that in what I'm going to discuss. So an example where that's been of a lot of very controversial is in cancer screening. Now you may or may not know, but cancer screening itself in many areas is a disputed medical intervention. Many female doctors do not go for breast screening, for example. So, and because there are upsides and downsides, but previously, it's only been the upsides that had been reported. And yet in 2013, new cancer screening leaflets came out, and I was part of the group that drew these up, along with psychologists and nurses and patients and doctors and everybody else, after months of argument, and they were based on a new principle. They were based on consider the offer of having cancer screening. They're presenting the pros and cons, not making a recommendation that you have cancer screening. The new leaflets do not recommend it. They say, there's this on this side and this on this side. Extraordinary. I think they're unique in the world to treat people as adults that can make up their own minds. Okay, and based on this idea of uniform reporting of benefits and harms. So, for example, in drawing that up, it was a great process, because part of drawing that up is to see what people want, what people understand. And so I was one of the ones presenting to a citizens' jury, testing all the materials. This is something I've learned. You've got to test the materials on audiences, see what they get from it, how do they respond, what are their emotional reactions to what you're presenting. And also this citizens' jury that we talked to were given, I don't know, about 20 different ways in which the information could be communicated, and had to sort out which one they liked. They had them in big sheets of paper, and I wasn't allowed to say which ones they wanted, which ones I thought they should like. I had to keep quiet. It's so difficult. And bless them, they picked the ones that I would have recommended and psychologists would have recommended. And the way in which what they picked and what had gone into the leaflet are what's called expected frequency trees. Now, that may be a new term for many people, but this is going to become a much more familiar term for reasons I'm going to mention in a moment. So, for example, that is part of the leaflet. It says that what we'd expect to happen to 100 women going for mammography, and 96 would have a normal result, and they'd just come back after 3 years. 4, we get a recall with a positive mammography, but don't go into a panic, because 3 of those actually won't have cancer. There'll be false positive mammographies. Don't panic. And that's how that's drawn up. So that's in the leaflet, and I think it's a very clear way to describe what will happen. Much better than talking about 90% specificity and 90% sensitivity of mammography and all this sort of stuff, which is very misleading and doesn't actually help people at all. This says what the message actually means when you get a recall. Okay, now, another expected frequency tree that we drew up was this. Now, this is quite delicate. Okay, see what you think about this one. This says what we'd expect for 200 women between 50 and 70 to attend screening. And 15 would develop breast cancer over that period. And amazingly, 12 would be treated and survive. Breast cancer now has got 80% survival rate, essentially. It's quite extraordinary, amazing improvement in the quality of care now. But sadly, 3 will die early from their breast cancer. Let's compare it with 200 other women who don't go for screening over the same period. What we'd expect is that the same number get breast cancer. This time, 8 will be treated and survive. 4 will die early from their breast cancer. So the downside for not screening is 1 extra early death from breast cancer out of the 200 women. The upside, however, is that 3 of these women will never know they got breast cancer. It'll be of a subclinical type. It won't be detected, and they'll live with it, and it won't harm them, and they'll go on and get something else, eventually die of something else. But those women will be detected if they go for screening. So essentially that means that the screening group, the downside, has got 3 unnecessary treatments out of the 200 women. So that's 20% of the women with breast cancer getting treated unnecessarily. That's 4,000 women a year in this country being treated unnecessarily because of the breast cancer screening program, for the benefit of 1,300 lives saved or early deaths prevented. Those numbers now are in the leaflet. Quite extraordinary, the upsides and the downsides, allowing people to make their choices. Those numbers are in the leaflet. What isn't in the leaflet, and this I got a bit grumpy about this, is the picture. Because at the last minute, they tried it on some people, and they said, I can't understand that, too complicated. Went mad, they spent ages, I know I can explain that to anybody. But they took it out. They took it out of the picture. It took it out of the graph. Other people, Breakthrough Breast Cancer UK, had all this information on their website. They won awards for the website because what they could do on a website is make it multi-layered. They could keep the top level, very gist-based, very qualitative. Next level, some numbers. And the next level down, then you could finally find all the details if you wanted to, only for those who wanted to. And this is what I describe as a numeracy paradox among general health communication, and in fact communication for many things, is that leaflets and information is optimized for people with very low numeracy in health. It's for a reading age of 11, that's official, and a numeracy I'd say of about the same level. That's not official, but the reading age is for 11, and so they're optimized for people with low numeracy. However, research has suggested that these people with low numeracy, are those who are not so interested in engaging with shared decision-making, informed choice, etc. The paradox, therefore, is that the leaflets are designed for people who don't want to read the leaflets. This is true. It's true. The leaflets are written at a level so that they can be read by people who don't want to read them. And the people who do want the extra information are not getting it in a clear way. And I think this has infuriated me and has made me really resolve to argue for leaflets with multiple levels, to have things in the back for people who want to know more, and to go onto multi-level websites so that people who want to know more can always find out more. Top level, gist, colors, little pictures, also all that stuff, that's just fine. Do you want to know more? Then people can go down. And so they can find out the level of information they want. So this is an important issue, and it's not just in breast screening, it's in many things, because you increasingly are considered as being responsible for your health. That's essentially how things are going much more. Now, something I'm really proud of, and this is why I said expected frequencies trees is a term that you perhaps should know, because teachers suddenly are having to know this term. It's now in the GCSE math syllabus. A group of us managed to get this in, and the conditional probabilities represented through expected frequencies with two-way tables, tree diagrams, and Venn diagrams. Expected frequencies as a way of teaching probability is now in the GCSE math syllabus. Now, the teachers, when this went in last year, went into complete panic because there's almost no materials about it. So we've written a book. Ta-da! Great. So this is coming out in August. Really proud of it, from Cambridge University Press. It's a book for teachers of GCSE probability, which is terribly badly taught and difficult to teach. First book, I think, exists on how to teach probability in secondary schools, and it's based almost entirely on the idea of expected frequencies as a mechanism for teaching. I've written it with a teacher. It's coming out in the Cambridge Mathematics brand now, and it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Go around the world, I'm sure it will. Okay, so there's the idea of trying to put, you really say that what I'm trying to get at there is trying to take quite complex ideas and put them into nice whole numbers. So that's the issue of trying to put people deal with nicely with whole numbers. They don't want decimals. They don't want, per 100,000 life years and all this nonsense. They want nice whole numbers. So I'd like to just describe another effort of trying to do the same thing. This time in acute risks. Acute risks, well, I mean accidental risks. So I did this TV program, Tells You in the Science of Chance, and they said, you've got to do something dangerous. I said, oh, great. Can I swim with sharks like Brian Cox? And they said, no, because you're not Brian Cox, and we've only got 300 quid. You realize, I have to, a little aside here. I mean, I have got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. You realize when you start making TV programs that there's definite ranking here. Brian Cox, he gets the helicopters and the mountaintops and the trips to Chile. I got a wet weekend in Oxfordshire, but I did get to jump out of an aeroplane. That's the 300 quid covered me jumping out of an aeroplane. A tandem. Anyone done a tandem skydive? Anyone done? Yeah. It was good? Frightening? Dangerous? Yeah, okay, but dangerous. I'm a statistician. I wonder how dangerous is that? How dangerous is jumping out of the plane? Well, fortunately, you can go on to the British Parachuting Association website and find this data. Now, I don't know why, this isn't on the front page of the website. You have to search really hard for it. I don't know why, but you really have to click down many levels to find this, but then it tells you that for over 20 years, 4,600,000 jumps, 48 deaths, 1 in 100,000. 10 every million jumps, 10 deaths, essentially, on average. Tandems, third of a million, 2 deaths. I kind of think these might have been correlated events. I don't think these were separate occasions. Anyway, I don't want to know. Best not to ask. But that means about 3 in a million. So I reckon, actually, with everything else, jumping out the plane, going up in the small plane, I reckon there's about 7 in a million chance I would die on this trip. Okay, is that all right? Just for a BBC TV program, is that right? 7 in a million chance of dying? Is that okay? Do I feel good about that? Do I feel bad about it? What can I compare it with? Well, fortunately, people have invented a unit for making this kind of comparison. It's called a Mort. It's a great unit. It's a wonderful official unit of deadly risk. It's a 1 in a million chance of sudden death. So 1 in a million is the same as flipping a coin 20 times in a row and it coming up heads every time. So I can expose you to a micromort by flipping a coin, and if it comes up heads 20 times in a row, I can put you to a nice peaceful death. Okay? Anyone do that? Who would do it for 1,000 quid? Yes, of course you would. Come on. You take those risks every day. 1,000 quid is a great deal. Who'd do it for a quid? But beware, I do carry two-headed coins. That's always the issue. Yeah. Now, why I say you do it every day is that if we look at the kind of risks that people are exposed to. Now, if you do really high risks, it's flying over Germany in the Second World War in a bomber was about 1 micromort a second. That is pretty high risk. But, having a bypass graft is about 16,000, so it's nearly a 2% mortality rate. Lifetime, your lifetime risk of getting hit by an asteroid is about, 1 in a million, so I don't think we worry about that very much. And this one, the getting out of bed and going to work, is because 50 million people, I should use Scottish data, but in England and Wales, there's 50 million people, and about 50 a day die from non-natural causes, essentially accidents, murder, et cetera, et cetera. So every day, there's 1 in a million chance that we're going to suffer a sudden death, on average. So that's all right. We get up, we go to work, we walk around, and we don't worry about it. So 1 in a million. So I thought 7 is a week's worth. And then you find out that scuba diving is about 5, running a marathon 7, hang gliding is about 8. They all come in at about this rate. They're all about, a week's worth every time you do these things. Extreme sports. But those are popular extreme sports. Base jumping, hurling yourself, putting on a wingsuit and hurling yourself off a cliff, about 400 minimum. So that's not so. But on a motorbike, it's about 6 miles for a micromort. So jumping out of the plane, that's about 40 miles on a motorbike. Yeah, that's all right. I sort of do that once in a while. But riding in a car, it's about 300 miles for a micromort. Huge amount more. So we can make these comparisons. So suddenly, we've turned into neat whole numbers, all these accidental risks we might be exposed to, and we can get a feeling for, and miles on a motorbike is a very good calibration, in fact. I convert everything to miles on a motorbike. Just as I'll show you, for chronic risks, I convert everything to cigarettes. So I think they're useful units. Because micromorts, which are measures of accidental death, are fine for accidents. But actually, we're quite cautious. What about chronic risks? There's my idea of a night out. Last night's menu was slightly better than that. It's a chip shop in Liverpool. But the point about these risks, and this is risky food, is not measurable in micromorts. Your spam fritter is not going to kill you on this. Well, it might actually, but unless you sort of choke on it, it's not like to kill you on the spot. It's not great for your long-term health. And that's what a lot of people here would be more interested in, are chronic lifestyle risks on what they're doing to us. Okay, so how can we measure those? Okay, so here's a classic example of a chronic lifetime risk. Remember the bacon story a few months ago? WHO saying bacon is carcinogenic, which it is, so that's fine, it's carcinogenic, but the terrible coverage saying have the same cancer risk as cigarettes. No, they don't. There's the same evidence that they're carcinogenic, but not the same risk magnitude. So they're like useless risk, terrible risk communication, awful misunderstanding by the media, complete disaster. So actually that's what the WHO concluded, that 50 grams, it's about 3 rashers of bacon, processed meat a day is associated with an 18% increased risk of bowel cancer per year. Okay, so that's what was the findings, and I think they're fairly reasonable, fairly plausible. Do we care? Do we care? Is that big? Is that small? Just like jumping out of the plane, I want to know how does that calibrate against other things I might choose to do in my daily life that I quite enjoy doing. I quite enjoy a bacon sandwich. Does this mean I can't have a bacon sandwich? Well, let's see. That's known as a hazard ratio of 1.18. That's what they estimate from these epidemiological studies. I'll come back to hazard in a moment. But that's the idea. Okay, so let's see what that actually means. To know what that actually means to us, we have to, instead of looking at that relative risk, we have to go into percentage points. We have to look at an absolute risk. And to do that, we have to go onto the Cancer Research UK website or something, and it tells us that 6% of people will get bowel cancer during their lifetime. So let's suppose they're like you. I don't know, smug middle class, sitting down to your muesli and compote in the morning. I know the sorts you are. So sadly, those 6 of you will still get bowel cancer during your lifetime, even during that. Let's compare that with 200 other people who sit down to a 3-rasher carcinogenic breakfast every day of their lives, and that's how many now will get bowel cancer. So did you notice the difference? That's the 18% increase over the 6 percentage points. So all those people are eating that every day of their lives for that 1 extra case of bowel cancer. That's what the story is. It wasn't told that way. It was once I got hold of the BBC website. So it was told that way on the BBC website. And so it changes your whole perception. You think, oh, well, maybe I will have it. Oh, okay, I don't want to eat it every day, but, okay, I tucked into a bit of carcinogen this morning at the hotel. Yeah, lots of nods here. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, bring on the carcinogens, I say. But maybe not by the trough load every day, but, this is a risk I think I'm prepared to take for the pleasure of an occasional bacon sandwich. Okay, let's be rational human beings about this. So, the point is that relative risks are known to be a manipulative frame. We're going back to the Kahneman idea, the framing. Endless experiments have shown that. So where in America you're getting direct-to-consumer advertising for your own lovely statin, and maybe some people here are on Lipitor, this is how it's communicated. You increase your chance of heart attack is reduced by 36%. Whoa, that's great. Small print, it says what that means is that the risk goes down from 3% to 2% over 5 years. So that means 100 people are going to have to take the drug every day for 5 years with possible side effects to prevent 1 heart attack. They don't say it like that, do they? I don't know. Wonder why not. Because it doesn't sound so great. So these are, again, framing. Your emotions are being manipulated by the framing of the numbers. And this is something I think that's what I'm sort of personally battling against. Okay, so these hazard ratios are what comes out of epidemiological studies done by colleagues of mine. They're great. They're really good people. And they come up with numbers like that. So the daily bacon sandwich, 1.18, and not just for bowel cancer, but actually increasing your all-cause mortality. 2 hours watching television, sat on your backside for 2 hours, Downton Abbey Christmas special, 2 hours, increase in your annual risk of death by 1.09, an association of that. There's something about just sitting, sedentary behavior, which is bad for you. Get up, move around, come on. No, well, not now. 5 fruit and veg a day is associated with a big reduction in annual risk of death. First 20 minutes is great benefit in the first 20 minutes. Next 40 minutes, well, hardly worth bothering with. So, don't say it. This is not. I'm not a doctor. This is not a talk on public health. Don't take no notice whatsoever of what I say. Being male, of course, is the worst thing of all. 50% increase risk of dying each year compared with a woman the same age. Okay, so what's understood by these relative risks? Again, relative risks is a very poor way of communicating. It's very badly understood. It can be considered as manipulative. So, for example, the Daily Express, when it got a story on red meat, it said if people cut down the amount of red meat they eat, 10% of all deaths could be avoided. No. Hang on, what are they talking about? What do they mean? They don't know what they mean. They've got no idea what they're talking about. I mean, you get this sort of drivel coming out because of these use of relative risks. Okay, so an alternative metaphor that we might use, and this is one I like, this is one I'm promoting. To work out what these lifestyle choices are doing to us, what about the metaphor of how old are you, really? And this is, if you go onto the web and ask, what is my real age, you will find endless people willing to tell you that. Not your chronological age, but how old your body really is. So you can get this website. This is Dr. Oz, and he's a smug git, he really is. So he's awful. Even in America, they think he's awful. And so, he's 8 years younger than he needs to be. Oh, disgusting. Anyway, and that's because he takes all his supplements and compounds that he then tries to sell you. And all these sites are trying to flog you something. Here's another one. How fast are you aging? There's her. She looks okay, doesn't she? But she's 7 years older than she need be because she gets stressed. So, and then they'll sell you something else. So there's site after site. But in fact, there are some good sites like this. Maybe some of you have gone onto this. NHS Choices Heart Age website. It's rather good. I was on the team that drew it up, that built it. I think it's rather good. It tells you, you put in all your details, and it tells you how old your heart is compared with you. And if your heart is a lot older than you are, it's time maybe to start changing your lifestyle, maybe even popping a statin now and then. Cool. So this metaphor of how old are you really is being shown in increasing number of studies to be rather popular and rather vivid at grabbing people. So what it means is that, but it has a technical definition as well. And again, I think this is an idea you're going to see a lot more of. It's the age of a healthy person who has the same risk as you, essentially. So there's a nice picture. It shows what you've got a sort of healthy trajectory. Everyone gets, as they get older, risk goes up of anything, really. You start falling apart, essentially. So this is your age. And if that's your risk level, so then what you do is just go along here and go there, and that says, well, that's your effective age. So it's a very simple idea that people are applying. You can find out your brain age, your lung age, your heart age, your ubble age, your everything age, if you want to. It's all very depressing. Now, what this is doing is operating on what's known as the hazard curve. I've already referred to hazard ratios. Now, the actuaries among you will be very familiar with this idea. This is what's known as the force of mortality. The force of mortality. Isn't that great? I love it. So there's the force of mortality on a log scale. This is the percentage of people who don't make their next birthday. So I'm this age, so 1% of people my age, men, don't make their next birthday. 1 in 1,000 36-year-olds don't make the next birthday. Safest age is about 7, 8, 9 years old. Nobody has ever been safer in the entire history of the human race than 7-year-olds in our culture at the moment. Only 1 in 10,000 do not make their 8th birthday. And what do? We drive them to school in big Range Rovers, fuss over them and all this sort of stuff. Nonsense. Nobody has ever been safer. Okay, women are lower risk at all ages. Men, as I said, have got 50% increased risk of dying each year compared with a woman of a similar age. So, so which is the weaker sex? Don't know. So what the hazard ratio does is pump that up by a certain proportion. And you notice this is shame. This is the risk-taking bulge, the jump at 17. Yeah, very familiar. A bit sad, that is. That's the risk-taking bulge. The risk-taking bulge in women is smaller, but it's still there. Okay, let's look at the shape of that curve, though. What do you notice about it? Well, what you notice about it is what this guy called Gompertz, again, actuaries among you will know all about this man. What a great guy he was. In 1825, he looked at survival analyses nearly 200 years ago and spotted the pattern that when you plot it on a log scale and you get down here, it's a straight line for men and women. It's not only got a straight line, it's got a common gradient for men and women. And that gradient has essentially stayed the same over different cultures, over different societies, over different periods. It goes up and down as the risk goes up and down, but the gradient basically stays the same. Wherever you are as a human being, what it means is that your risk of dying each year goes up by the same amount, on average. So Gompertz's observation says that between these ages, and actually between about 7 and 90, if you take out the risk-taking bulge of youth, the annual risk of dying increases by about 9% relative per year. Your body falls apart at 9% per year. And we all know about compound interest, don't we? Well, it's a pretty nasty bit of work. So each year older is associated with a hazard ratio of 1.09. Just getting a year older. Remember that? And that's the same as watching 2 hours on television. Remember that? So your annual risk of dying doubles about every 8 years. And double, that's why it gets you in the end. That's why we don't live forever, because it's doubling every 8 years. So, this is quite harsh, in fact. So what do we do about it? Well, we can't do much about it, to be honest, because age is the great killer. But what this does is, and I think this is really quite cool, what this allows us to do is to put a slightly more rigorous basis for these numbers of the sort that Dr. Oz is so fond of, to say about how old we are really. Because remember what I said was that each year we get older has got a hazard ratio of 1.09, that gradient goes up like that. And that's the same as watching 2 hours of television. So 2 hours of television, what it's doing essentially, is as if you're putting a year on your age. If you sit on your backside for 2 hours a day, and not just it's not the television that's doing it to you, it's not these horrible rays, no, it's just sitting there, it's sedentary behavior. 2 hours a day, it's making you a year older, essentially. It's putting a year on your age. So a bit of maths, got to have some maths. I teach in maths department. I'm in the pure maths department, for heaven's sakes, got to have some maths. Habit with a hazard ratio h is essentially equivalent to advancing your age by t years, where 1.09 to the power t equals h. So, and those of you, if you are familiar with maths, you'll see what's going on there. So t equals log h of 1.09. So every time you read a story coming in the newspapers that something is increasing your risk of death by 20%, you just plug into that formula and it'll tell you, oh, that's making me 2 years older. It's very simple. And I invented this, and then I found out that someone else had invented it 20 years ago. So sob. So it had all been done before. Yeah, I know. That's I invented that, and I didn't invent it. Never mind. That's the way it goes. So what that means is that these habits we can convert to effective changes to our age. So the daily sausage, bacon sandwich is putting 2 years on your life, 2 years on your age. Well, that also means that over a lifetime, it's going to take 2 years off your age, 2 years off your life expectancy. So a daily bacon sandwich is taking 2 years off your life. 2 hours of television a day, an hour of your life in terms of life expectancy. 5 fruit and veg a day, fantastic benefit. Making 4 years younger, tuck in, eat that fruit and veg. 4 years younger. Being male, 4 years older. Difference between life expectancy of men and women is 4 years about. So being male is essentially putting 4 years on your age. Yeah, pretty depressing, isn't it? As I said, the activity, great benefit for the first 20 minutes, next 40 minutes, might bother, and after that, really don't bother. Really, there's not much point at all, unless you like it, of course. But what we've done then, so we've changed the metaphor. We've changed from a metaphor of what it's doing to your effective age. And I think it's a powerful one, which we're exploring in randomized trials to see how vivid this is, whether it grabs people's attention and so on. So life expectancy, okay, let's do another metaphor. See what you think about this one. I've looked at hazard ratio. I've looked at change in life expectancy, getting you older. Let's look at another story. See what the emotional content of this story is. If sitting on your backside, it's going to take a year off your life. And adult life, about 50 years. So that's 2% off your life from watching 2 hours of television a day. Okay, so 2% of an adult life, pro rata, is 30 minutes a day. Because 2% of a day is 30 minutes. Because there's, 48 half hours. So we could say that watching the Downton Abbey for 2 hours, the effect of that in the long term is like taking half an hour off your life for each 2 hours of television you watch. So you've not only wasted 2 hours watching Downton Abbey, you've taken half an hour off your life as well by being on your backside for 2 hours. So just remember that. And we call this a Microlife. So this is our unit, our nice whole number unit for chronic risks. Now, why is it a Microlife? I'm going to tell you something you didn't know. 1.5 million hours is 57 years, which is roughly an adult lifespan. So when you're an adult in your 20s and 30s, you've got 1.5 million hours to live on average. And then you just fritter them away, poof, just like that. I mean, they tick away at 48 a day anyway, but you can use them up a lot quicker, depending on your lifestyle. Okay, so Microlife. So what we can say is that on average, it's as if you are 1 year older or lose 1 Microlife a day for each daily habit of eating a lump of red meat, eating the burger. So eat it slowly, because it's half an hour of your life. If it's bacon, it's an hour. So just enjoy your bacon. I loved my bacon this morning. And I had the haggis, and I had the black pudding. So I thought, yeah, so I did eat it slowly. That was an hour of my life. That's all right. Drink. It's about half an hour for a reasonable drink. So it's about 1/4 of an hour for a unit of alcohol. And cigarettes. So it's about 15 minutes for a cigarette, half an hour for 2 cigarettes. So 20 cigarettes a day takes about 9-10 years off your life on average. It's 5 hours a day, which is 5 hours a day of your life. So, if you're smoking 20 a day, you're going towards your death at 29 hours a day. Boom. Actually, you're gasping towards your death. And this one, oh dear. Those of you it's a bit early in the morning for this one. I got a body double for this. This is somebody who is really revolting, who's 5 kilograms overweight at least. 5 kilograms, hazard ratio 1.09, half an hour of your life every day, which you're 5 kilograms overweight, essentially. So there's, and so we've tried all of these, and some people really like this. If I do this, it's half an hour of my life. That's quite a powerful, vivid thing. Because what it's doing is trying to get over this idea of psychological idea of temporal discounting. I mean, you must spend, people here must spend a lot of time advising people about their old age, and everyone goes, no, yawn, who cares? Well, this is what this is doing, is bring it to the moment. Your habits, what it's doing to your life. You're aging quicker than you need to. What a powerful idea. Okay, so this is all to do with storytelling around numbers. The numbers don't speak for themselves. It's how they're packaged up, what metaphor is used, and that's what we're exploring at the moment. Okay, so just to finish off, this is fine if we know the numbers. What if we admit we don't fully understand what's going on? So this is areas where there's pretty good stats. And I've been doing some work with others on what we might call uncertainty. This is risk so far we've been talking about. What about uncertainty? We just don't know. We don't understand. New threats, GM foods, nanotechnology, all sorts of stuff we don't really understand. What are we doing that? And I just want to put that up as something I've developed and is starting to be taken up by some people, which some of you may find useful as a concept. It's basically saying that when we do a formal analysis, build a mathematical model, a risk equation or something like that, sometimes we can do it, we can give the 4 stars, we really understand what's going on, we can make good numerical assessments, but it goes down to all these star ratings, and at this point we're doing risk where we really don't understand what's going on, completely new, novel, emerging risks. For example, Zika virus at the moment. Started off down here, we're just about at 2-star now, I think, and after a while we get up to 3-star on Zika virus. Because people are not happy to put numbers on the risks yet. They're still taking a precautionary approach, but within a while we're going to know much more about it. So when new emerging risks come up, we start moving up this scale, and the point is, though, that what it's saying is that the natural risk management down here is resilience. To do things, don't try to optimize, just admit you don't know fully, put in stuff that's resilient to surprises, that things you haven't thought of yet. So we're talking about unknown unknowns down the bottom. So I think it's really quite a powerful idea. So just to finish off, I'm not really talking about risk management too much in this circumstance, but it's a good chance to get some cheap laughs at people's expense. Risks and crises are completely different. We have to be prepared for the crises before they happen. So for example, that's me jumping off a cliff in Greece a couple of years ago on holiday. And the point is, you don't want to be at that stage and then say, I wonder how deep it is. You need to make sure someone's jumped off first, even if you have to push them, is the question. And the other response of not to do in times of crises is just to do premature reassurance. This is very easy for people. Oh, it's all right. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. So, the classic example of that, one of them was the killer cucumbers a few years ago, if you remember that. And the Germans were blaming the Spanish organic vegetable industry, and there's the Spanish Minister of Agriculture stuffing herself with cucumbers. He looks like he's just about had enough cucumbers, but he's got to keep on eating them, keep on going. And some of the older ones, you will remember the lovely classic example of that, which was many years ago when John Gummer, trying to persuade us that British beef is safe by force-feeding his 4-year-old daughter Cordelia a British beef burger. But in fact, maybe he was a little bit premature on this. I mean, I think she's okay, but last heard. But he was, completely saying, it's fine. Don't you worry your little heads about it. Instead of treating people as adults, they can make up their own minds. And actually, one of the most interesting things, though, is when you look at that picture, modern forensic photographic analysis reveals that that is not the bite mark of a 4-year-old girl. So, don't believe everything you're told. Okay, thank you very much indeed.